Let's go! All right, I don't want to get copyrighted. I'm going to turn that off. How's it going, everybody? We are back with episode 3. It's kind of crazy that we've already done 3 of these in a short period of time. Today, we are deviating off from what we've been doing a little bit, not just rankings, but our tiers. And today, we're going to focus on the wide receiver position because there's so much meat on those bones for the wide receivers as far as their values, their ADPs. We're going to get into it. I don't think we have any brand new NFL news. Podcasts like 2 days apart, so there hasn't been anything today unless you've heard anything today potentially.
I don't believe so. I don't think there was anything super crazy from today. Howell got the Commanders starting QB job, which I don't think is a huge deal, but something a little new, a little fresh, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know that was actually confirmed, so I guess that's a good piece of news. I think, honestly, I don't know if that increases or decreases the value of the Commanders receivers, but I think it kind of decreases it because you saw how good Amari Cooper did with Jacoby Brissett last year. But I mean, who knows? Sam Howell might be the next coming of like Joe Burrow or some shit. I don't know. So we'll
here's
see
the
what
thing.
happens.
I think that it evens out because Jacoby Brissett is not a quarterback that offensive coordinators like to give many opportunities to throw, but I think that when he does, he is effective. So I think that there's going to be more throwing opportunities with Sam Howell, even if they aren't as efficient. So stays right about the same spot for me.
That's fair. I definitely think the Commanders will be down a good portion of the year. I think the wide receivers there will do fine. But other than that, there's really no news. So wide receiver tiers, this should be a bit of a quicker video or a quicker podcast today than the normal ones. But you'd some arguments that might last a while. I'm just now seeing that I missed my D tier draft, but it's fine. Your S tier. Take us through your S tier because our S tiers are actually different, which surprises me. So this is our league winners tier. So go for it.
Yeah. So I have Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown in this tier. They are all amazing receivers. I firstly want to get out that no, I do not have Kupp in there. And that is simply because he's got a little bit of an injury. Like I said, mid to late season, they're going to be like, okay, don't want to get our star best receiver in the league player injured. And so he might not get as much action as you'd want him to see, especially with an injured quarterback throwing to him. Now, I did put these in order as well with Hill, Jefferson, Chase, Adams, St. Brown. Tyreek Hill, I think, has the opportunity for a 2,000-yard season, something that I think nobody else has the opportunity for. He gets more deep balls than anybody else aside from arguably Jamar Chase, which absolutely insane opportunities there. Justin Jefferson, I don't think we have to speak on him at all. Jamar Chase, I don't think we have to speak on him at all. Adams, I think, could be in the next tier, but I put him here because if Jimmy Garoppolo does get into a rhythm with him down low, I think that he has the possibility to go for like 16 receptions, even if it's just for like 100 yards a game, which is insane in PPR. And he's going to get those touchdown throws at least some of the time as well. And then St. Brown, I think, is the one that people think is out here on this list. St. Brown is, once again, amazing receiver. He separates himself from the pack in practice and in game. Jared Goff loves him, talks super highly of him. If he didn't get injured last year, he was on an insane pace. They got some injuries in their receiver room. A new tight end that probably won't see as much work in the beginning of the season. I think he has insane opportunity for league winning upside. Now, your S tier, once again, looks a little different than mine. Go ahead and speak on that.
Yeah, mine is just the basic S tier. You got Jefferson, Chase, Hill, and Kupp. Now, if that's the order that I'd have it at right now, I could see switching Chase and Hill, purely because of the Joe Burrow news of his calf strain, which I know a lot not as concerned about anymore, but I'm just concerned about re-injury risk. So I could see doing Jefferson, Hill, Chase, and Kupp. Some optimism about Kupp, but I hate having to draft any player that is already injured going into the season. He should be fine for week 1, But if he's not or lingers, then he definitely falls out of my S tier. But I'm going to hold out for hope, just basing off he had 2 years ago where he just popped the ever living hell off. So S tier, if you can get Jefferson, Chase, Hill, or Cup in the first round, I think you're pretty much set as far as your receiving room, as long as you don't get a dog shit wide receiver too. So that's my S tier. But here, this is our like fantastic grabs or players that you should be really happy drafting. They're going to be high wide receiver ones. And for me, that's going to look a lot different from yours again. But I'm actually going to change it. It's going to be a little bit different than what's on the sheet here. But I have Diggs, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb. I'm gonna move up my boy Chris Olave, and I'm gonna be biased as shit, and I don't care.
No.
Yeah, I'm gonna move that last little spot there. I think I've spoken so highly of Olave, it would be wrong of me not to. But yeah, I'm gonna go Stephon Diggs. Absolutely amazing this year, as well as AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson. As long as Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I think should pop off and be a top 10 receiver. Should definitely sneak into that top 12 range, top 10 range. We kind of listed him as a bust in our last podcast episode, but second or third round if he falls there, like in our draft. But a lot of people are taking him very beginning of second round, very late first rounds. Be there for you, but that's my A tier. Fantastic grabs. Yours looks a bit different though.
I know, it's really funny the way you said that, actually, because I'm going the other way with CeeDee Lamb. Like you said, we talked about him before. If anything, I'm moving him down to the B tier. So I technically have him in my A tier right now, but that one goes up and down for me. Cup is in here, obviously. Like I said, still a fantastic player. Does not deserve to go any lower. I have Diggs, which Diggs would be in my S tier if I didn't think there were issues going on between him and Josh Allen, Bill's offense in general, with all the interceptions. And, hopefully they can bring it back this year. But with some of those issues going on, that's the only reason I don't have him a league winner. But I would never put him any lower as well. I have Garrett Wilson in this tier, who I think could be an S tier, except for one factor. He had insane work last year with quarterbacks that are nothing like Aaron Rodgers. He had no receivers behind him, or almost none. But that's the difference this year is, while there's no insane receivers behind him, you've got Mecole Hardman, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Corey Davis. Two of those receivers Aaron Rodgers is used to throwing to for a long time. Two of those receivers are definitely solid options behind him. It's not like he has absolutely nobody behind him. So he still has this league winner upside, I think, that a lot of people see in him, but that's why he is not there for me. And AJ Brown, I'm just going to leave it that, because I could go up or down on him. Depends on his target split with Devonta Smith and how many times Jalen Hurts wants to run, but I'm not willing to go up or down at all. Any comments on that?
I just like how you said Randall Cobb's name like he was relevant, like he's been relevant the last 3 to 5 years.
He's not. But to Aaron Rodgers, he is at least a little bit, and that's why I threw that in there.
Fair enough. But I think that's a good point. I think Wilson will finish top 10, but has at least a tiny bit of competition. He's not going to have a 30% target share, but he'll still have a high-ass target share for sure. I pretty much agree with your A tier, unless Cup stays healthy throughout the season, and then he should be an S tier. Both move to S tier if there weren't those kind of chemistry concerns or unhappiness concerns. But here is smoking hot because it is a little bit spicy to start. We got B tier, our low receiver ones, or our high wide receiver twos, depending on how they'll do throughout the season.
I'm gonna let you go first, but I wanna scold you real quick for having St. Brown in the B tier. So with that, continue.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. I think, talk about St. Brown. I have Devontae Adams because I am very much off of Devontae Adams this year. I've been very vocal about that. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I had Olave, but I think I'm going to move him up to A tier. I think he'll bounce around this season for me between A and B tier. And in B tier, I have Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, and I don't even know who Allen is. I'm not. Oh, Keenan Allen. God, I'm so stupid. Keenan Allen.
Wow.
I had a big brain fart there. That's my bad. I think Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle will all low tier receiver ones or high tier receiver twos. I'm very confident about that. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I could see A tier throughout the season once he gets better and better. So don't hate on me too much yet. I'm so high on this Detroit backfield that I genuinely think they are going to be such a powerhouse. And Amon-Ra St. Brown slightly tweaked his leg. It looks like he's fine. But, he's not going to have any competition the first 6 weeks as receiving. But then by the time like Sam Laporta gets his role figured out and Jameson Williams comes back, I think that St. Brown will lose a bit of target share. So I'm kind of just baking that in as far as his B tier. And then Devontae Adams, you said it in one of the episodes as far as how it affects Devontae Adams. I don't hate Jimmy Garoppolo, but I hate him for Devontae Adams. I think that Adams' ceiling and floor just gets lowered with Jimmy at the helm. And then, we don't really know this of Josh Jacobs. So if Josh Jacobs comes back, I think that hurts Devontae Adams' upside because just slam Jacobs into the ground for like 400 touches because he's on the franchise tag if he signs, most likely, or on a one-year deal. But if he doesn't come back, this offense is going to suck. And I think that Adams is going to have less and less touchdowns than he did last year. Definitely not going to have 14. I don't know if he'll even flirt with double-digit touchdowns, but that's my B tier. So why don't you go ahead and start us off on your B tier?
Yeah. My B tier consists of receivers that I'm just so unsure about. I think a lot of people have them higher than I do. These are ones that I could almost, I think, switch out with receivers in my next tier. First is Jalen Waddle, who is obviously the wide receiver 2 behind Tyreek Hill. He's still getting a huge target share, but I don't like that behind receiver. Same with my next one, Devonta Smith. That's why neither of them are in my A tier. I probably wouldn't take them where they're going in drafts. Chris Olave, you're a lot higher on than I am because you're a Saints fan and have no faith in Michael Thomas, nor do I, but I at least have a little bit. Keenan Allen is in here. He is top tier. I think I want to switch him and CeeDee Lamb, actually. He is very proven, no matter the quarterback, no matter who else is in the offense. He is somebody that I think could be higher. And Amari Cooper is somebody, the last guy in my tier. I do not want to see him shine, but it's no fault of his own. It's through the hate of Deshaun Watson. I cannot get myself to draft him, but I am unhappily thinking that he is going to do a lot better than I would like him to. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's definitely some Steelers bias thrown in there, but go for
it. No. Let's get this straight. That was not Steelers bias. That was Deshaun Watson hate bias.
Fair enough. But I can get behind that.
I want to go back and look at your tier real quick and look at Metcalf and Ridley in this B tier. Metcalf is going to be the guy with the best corner on him in every game, not getting the deep balls as Tyler Lockett is. He's just going to be kind of mid, I think, again. People are taking him a lot higher than I think he's going to go. I'm not going to take him in a single draft. And same with Ridley. He's in a crowded room. He's going to have the cornerback 1 on him. And he's got guys behind him that can do just as much damage as him without getting the same attention. So that's why they're both going to be in my next tier. Actually, not both. I've got Ridley in my D tier, but we'll get to that in a second.
What the hell? Okay. All right. I feel like I need to chime in here before we move on because Calvin Ridley, all right, I definitely understand everyone's concern about Calvin Ridley. If you do have those concerns, they're valid because, man hasn't played in a year and a half to 2 years. But we have seen in the preseason game, he did so good in his preseason game. I'm very high on him, probably higher than a lot of other people have been on him. And Flex is going to take a step this year. I've been saying it for the last couple podcasts. I'm very much in on Calvin Ridley. So DK Metcalf, I feel like a lot of people are not going to agree with not only my tier, Metcalf, but of your tier of DK Metcalf, because you are lower on him than I am. I don't see DK as a top 15 wide receiver. And if you're going to argue with me over that, what's that?
I was going to say neither do I, and he's one of those guys that people have been on for years because he is an insane talent. We're not hating on his talent here. It's the fact that he's going to have the most attention while having people who can do just as much damage on his team, and I think that's the difference there. That people just look at the talent and a player they're excited about, and they're like, yes, I'm grabbing him. And for me, it's the opposite. I'm like, no, I will not touch him.
Yeah, I don't want to. If people are going to argue with the facts that we are so low on DK Metcalf, let's take a second and look at Tyler Lockett finished as the wide receiver 13 last year with 117 targets, and DK Metcalf last year as the wide receiver 19 with 141 targets. So on less target standard, by the way, but even if it's PPR, Lockett finished better on less targets. If we're going to look at PPR, Lockett still finished as a wide receiver 13. Metcalf finished as a wide receiver 16. So even though Tyler Lockett got a couple less receptions and like 30 less targets, 25 less targets than DK Metcalf, still did better. And now they bring in JSN. So I think Metcalf's going to be, that like wide receiver 20, like 18. But I don't think he should be going in the third round like I've seen him in the second round, like I've seen him go in some other 12-team leagues or whatever. So, yeah, I'm kind of off on him. But our C tiers, and I can't tell whose C tier is more controversial, so I'm going to let you first, I guess.
Thank you for throwing me under the bus there. I actually forgot that I firstly, since we were just on the topic, moved DK from my C tier to my F tier, which is avoid these guys, simply because of his current ADP, not because I would absolutely never, ever draft him. Just want to get that straight real quick. So in the C tier, I have Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Drake London, Marquise Brown, Tyler Lockett, and Brandon Ayuk. Now, all these guys are guys for me that didn't finish that high last year, but have huge, huge opportunity this year. And I would be excited to get every single one of them except for DeAndre Hopkins or Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is not quite his fault. He burned me last year that I spent an early draft pick on and is not somebody I can ever trust again. DeAndre Hopkins is somebody who we saw A.J. Brown dominate as the wide receiver one in that offense, and I think he will dominate just the same, especially with Treylon Burks recently getting injured. But he's still getting the wide receiver one in an offense that we saw A.J. Brown have up and down games on. So while I think the opportunity is there, that's why he's in the C tier. Deontay Johnson finished low last year due to lack of touchdowns with 147 targets. That's huge opportunity. DJ Moore is moving from a Baker Mayfield-led offense and Sam Darnold-led offense to Justin Fields, who I think is going to take a huge step. And huge opportunity there. One of, I think, the most talented receivers in the league. Another talent is Drake London, who saw a ton of targets at the end of last year from Desmond Ridder. I think that's only going to continue this year after more built chemistry in the first-team offense. Marquise Brown, 10-plus targets a game last year. Absolutely insane, even on a bad offense. I think Colt McCoy can get it to him even before Kyler Murray gets there. Tyler Lockett, you just talked about him. All these guys, huge opportunity. One thing that I like about a lot of these guys is the ability for the deep ball, the one play, while also still having the ability to do everything else aside from somebody like maybe Mike Williams. My last guy in here is Brandon Ayuk, who is one of those guys I hate to love because he's a wide receiver too in the offense, but he's truly a very talented receiver, great route runner, gets himself open a ton of the time. I haven't drafted him yet because I can't get myself to draft most wide receiver twos, but would not be mad about at all. Any thoughts on that one?
Completely forgot I didn't even put Ayuk in my tiers, so I'm going to throw him in at C tier as well. I really like Ayuk this season. I think you could definitely draft him a little bit later because everyone's going to be focused on, the Kittles, the Debos, the offense, where I think you're getting a piece of a really good 49ers offense. I think he can finish above Debo depending on this year. I think he can finish above Kittle if Kittle has a down year. So like I'm not off on Ayuk whatsoever.
Real quick. Do you know what Brandon Ayuk's fantasy finish last year was?
I'm gonna pull it up real quick so I can check it. Holy shit! PPR. He finished wide receiving above DK Metcalf. Wide receiver 15 above DK Metcalf. That's insane.
Yes, and where was Debo Samuel? Wide receiver 38. He missed a couple games, but still, that's still insane.
Yeah, I think if he didn't miss some games, he'd definitely be on there. But yeah, I'm liking your tiers. And to point out, DJ Moore finished as the wide receiver 24, and he had tell you how bad his offensive scheme was for him. He had 118 targets and only 3 of them. And I guarantee that he had less than like 4 drops last year, probably. So to have 118 targets, only 63 catches, and only have 888 on 118 targets, he still finished as the wide receiver 24. And I think that he's going to finish top 20 if Fields can take that step. We saw that little screen. Everyone's hyping up that little screen, which I think we're overhyping a preseason screenplay to DJ Moore. But I think that's at least the start of the chemistry between them. I like DJ Moore this year, but my God, I'm so much higher on him than I probably should be. But
and seeing those manufactured targets in preseason, even you want a guy who gets those targets that are dedicated to them, those plays that are dedicated to them. They're going to have a role, even if maybe the game's not going their way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's pretty solid. I also have him in my C tier as well. And let me just go through my sort of C tier. I have Tyler Lockett, who I am very high on. I think could even be pushed into B tier as a high tier wide receiver too, depending on JSN's involvement this year. But I'm going to be safe and I have Christian Watson. I'm kind of high on this year. They have like a top 5 schedule for fantasy as far as like top 5 easiest wide receiver schedule. So he should easily finish as a mid wide receiver too. I have Debo Samuel in this tier. We have a lot of unknowns with this 49ers offense. And when Christian McCaffrey was on the field with Debo Samuel, his points per game took a big hit. Debo Samuel's not going to be, the 2021 sort of guy that he was. So I'm not very high on Samuel going into this year. Next is T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins will be a very solid wide receiver too this year, but he has never had a wide receiver 18. So to be drafting him as like the wide receiver 13 or 14 is way too high for my taste. I will draft him as a wide receiver 18 because that's his ceiling. So why are we drafting him as a wide receiver 13, 14? Always the same. He always has around 70, 75 catches, just around 1,000 yards and like 7 touchdowns. So that's what we can expect out of him. And I think that's wide receiver 2 numbers. So I'm going to keep him here. I threw Ayuk and Moore in there as well because I did a really bad job of figuring out where to put them. But I'm very convinced on Ayuk and Moore. I think they're going to be top 20 receivers this year. We have not touched on quite yet. I have McLaurin and Jahan Dotson here as wide receiver 2s. We touched on who knows if Sam Howell is going to give him the right production. Who knows if Jacoby Brissett will give him the right production. But I love Jahan Dotson as a sleeper pick this year. I'm kind of in on Jahan Dotson as a low wide receiver 2 this season or a high wide receiver 3. You can find him in your later drafts, round 9, round 8. If you're in a 12-team league, I would absolutely snag him up. And McLaurin, I'm kind of iffy on. He did finish. Where did he finish last year? As a top 14 wide receiver 14. The uncatchable targets are what really hurt. Same thing we were talking about with DJ Moore. So the fact that, he's getting a lot of those uncatchable throws really hurts. So I'm hoping Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett can kind of change that around depending on who starts. But that's my C tier. We're going to go into go for it.
I would like to comment on your C tier real quick. I think it's first of all wild that you have both Dotson and McLaurin in the same tier.
I'm high on Dotson.
I know you are, and I just don't get that one or Christian Watson. Christian Watson has already dropped balls in the preseason. Admittedly, he doesn't have much competition there at all. I don't think Jordan Love is going to manufacture good fantasy wide receivers. I am completely out on the Packers wide receivers. I don't think I even. Okay, no, I did put him in my F tier. And as for the Commanders receivers, McLaurin is a talented guy. He's the only one that I would draft from there. Behind him, Dotson and Curtis Samuel, who Curtis Samuel is actually quite talented, even as the wide receiver 3. And I hate my crowded receiver rooms, especially with Sam Howell at quarterback. And I'm staying away from those guys personally. How about your D tier?
Well, before we do that, you can hate my seats. You have Calvin Ridley in the same tier as DJ Chark, so we can agree to disagree. But for D tiers for us, the D tier really means like you should get these guys in the later part of your drafts. Don't focus too much on them unless they fall into your laps. Me is
Well
Deontay
said.
Johnson and George Pickens. I have both of them up here because I'm still very unsure about Kenny Pickett and his passing step up in year 2. Is it going to be kind of shaky like it was? 147 targets and getting 0 touchdowns for Johnson. It's not going to happen again. I could see him being pushed up to C tier at some point, but I'm just so unsure about this passing offense right now.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Oh no!
As a Steelers fan, I have to stop you and support my team here. First of all, Kenny Pickett led the Steelers to a winning record last year after starting terribly.
I would like to stop you right there. TJ Watt led the Steelers to a winning record. It wasn't Kenny Pickett. It was TJ Watt.
It was. And if you go back and watch highlights, watch the games, he truly progressed into being an NFL level quarterback. If you watch the chemistry of just the one preseason game they've had so far, they looked amazing. If you watch training camp, they look amazing. Deontay Johnson is one of the greatest separation receivers in the league. George Pickens is, might I say, the greatest catch receiver in the league. I would be happy to have either of these guys, and it is awful that you put them in your D tier. Continue.
Saying I'm off on these guys. Let me get that out of the way. I'm just saying you should wait to draft them because the offense, as far as passing, is kind of unsure, but I get where you're coming from. They're both going to be pretty good this year, probably. For me, Jerry Jeudy's in my D tier. I get Sean Payton came over, and I get that Jerry Jeudy should be the one. But Cortland Sutton is still there. He's producing some hype, which I'm completely out on. It's the 4th or 5th round last year. So
I remember you being hype about him last year. And
I mean, get Sutton or do we get Jeudy? Who's going to eat? And ultimately, Jeudy won. But ultimately, there were no winners. If you drafted one of them, you had yourself a very bad time because they did not meet up to expectations. So I'm kind of off on Jeudy this year. I need to see more out of him. I need Sean Payton really put him into a winning position. So I'm done with him. I have the Buccaneers wide receivers here and Chris Godwin. If I had to pick one to go with, as far as who to draft over the other, that would be kind of tough, but I might be safer with Godwin because Evans is more of a aggressive catch, deep threat, whereas Godwin you can dump off for 5 yards and get 10 receptions for 90 yards, and in PPR you get 19 points. I feel like you're gonna need to rely on big plays from Mike Evans, so he might only be a 3 catch, 48 yard kind of guy, only get you less than 8 points. I did draft Mike Evans in one of my leagues as my wide receiver 4, so I'm kind of hoping he does good, but Godwin is definitely the safer option. And to round out my D tier, I have Drake London, who I know you are very high on. You have him in your seat. You drafted him this year, or no? I don't think you drafted him this year, right? I think you got taken from him.
No, I was. Yeah, he did.
But either way, you're high on him. You want him in other leagues, so I don't mind Drake London if he falls into your lap in the late draft. It's not just going to be 100% run plays. And the guy to pass to is Kyle Pitts or Drake London. I don't like either of them, but it's not a bad pickup if you have a good receiver room already. And let's see, your D tier part disgusts me. I'm not gonna lie to you. But go for
That's fine. That's fine. Your Steelers receivers and yours disgusted me. So happy to
Fair.
happy to return the favor. Starting mine off is Judy and Ridley. You already touched on Judy. Agree with everything you said. Can't trust him. If he falls into your lap, you know what? Don't mind it. Now, you heavily disagree with this one, but I feel the exact same about Calvin Ridley. Like I said, there's other proven guys in that receiver room. Solid tight end, receiving running back. I don't want any part of that as early as he is going, especially being gone a year and a half. If he falls into my lap, I'll take him, but that has not happened yet. These people are so high on him, and I don't think it ever will. Terry McLaurin is another one of those crowded room, not a great quarterback. If he falls in, it's fine. You know, these aren't bad guys. These are talented guys in this tier who maybe don't have the right situation. And with that, I'm going to DJ Chark. Now, DJ Chark is usually going undrafted, or I'm getting him one of the last couple of rounds of almost every draft I'm in because nobody wants him. But DJ Chark is one of those guys that has been injured, but before his injuries, and if you've seen him on tape, is an insanely talented receiver. I'm hoping he can get back to that. I'm hoping Bryce Young at some point during the season steps into a role where he can support a receiver like that. And if I had to pick one in that offense, I would go younger, more talented DJ Chark over Adam Thielen, personally. And somebody that I think is right in line with him, but is going earlier in drafts, but could fall, is Michael Pittman, who's got Anthony Richardson. At some point, maybe he could step into a role where he can support a receiver like that. Not expecting it, but if Pittman is super late, I would take him. And the last one in my tier, sadly, I do have him in the same tier as you, is George Pickens, just because he has a little bit lesser target share than Deontay Johnson. He is a contested catch guy, not creating as much separation. So even though he can make the catches, as a quarterback, you don't want to throw to him quite as much. Love George Pickens. Hurts me to have him here. Hopefully next year he'll be in the B or A tier. Any thoughts on those ones?
Talk a lot about crowded receiving rooms and how you hate them, but he used to be in a receiving room with Jones, and he still produced just fine. So I think we're kind of, I think a lot of people are way too high on Ridley. People like you are also way too low on Ridley. So I think there's a solid middle ground here. And for me, that's the B tier where he can be a low tier receiver 1 or a high tier receiver 2. So that's where I want him. I think that's a fair spot for him. Pushing it late to draft, I feel like you're just going to be missing out on a good receiver 2. But everything else in your list, I don't disagree with. I start mine off real quick with my F tier because you have Pittman in your D tier for late draft. I have him in my F tier. I don't really trust Anthony Richardson quite yet. He's definitely more of a deep thrower. And Michael Pittman is more of that guy who can just run like slant routes or shallow routes or flat routes, like 5-10 yards. Whereas Alec Pierce is the deep threat for the Colts. And I just feel like Michael Pittman's going to have a really low floor. He could have games where he doesn't get a catch. He could have games where catches for like 50 yards. I don't trust him. I don't want anything really to do with him. And same thing with Sutton Bucker in round 3 last year. And he was not even a top 30 wide receiver, I don't think. Let me double check that just to make sure I'm not crap. Oh, I'm sorry. He was the wide receiver 20 in PPR last year, but you don't draft the wide receiver 20 in PPR in the 3rd round, So I'm kind of out on Michael Pittman, partially biased from last year. Next is Mike Williams. I think I'm avoiding Mike Williams because of his ADP and the fact that he's inconsistent. Yes, you are going to get 30 points in a game out of Mike Williams at some point this season as far as PPR. You know what? He's also going to get that 4-point game for you as well. And you don't know which one is which. You don't know when to start him. What if you start him one game, then get pissed off and pull him next week, and he goes off for 30 points? That's the kind of receiver that Mike Williams is. You really have to be in to figure out when he should have his big play games. And I don't like just guessing with Mike Williams.
Yeah, I hate guessing. And I'm just going to comment on that real quick since we have them both in the same tier.
Yeah.
I will not draft Williams ever. That is a decision I hate making. And the only guy that I think falls into that group that I would ever draft is Tyler Lockett, because he does have those in-between games as well. But yeah, absolutely staying away from Mike Williams. Go ahead and continue.
Yeah, I think guys around Mike Williams' ADP, you have Warren, who I think, even though you don't have him very high, you still have him a tier higher than Williams. And I have McLaurin 2 or 3 tiers higher. And Tyler Lockett as well, we're both high on. So I would definitely go one of those two guys instead. To round out my F tier, I have Hopkins. I just want to stay away from Hopkins. Adam Thielen, I think he's technically the wide receiver 1 in Carolina. Be come week 5 or 6 of the season. I think Chark could take over, or somebody else will take over. And then the Ravens wide receiver group, I don't want to try and pick one of the 3 and just hope that one of them does. Odell, I'm out on Bateman with the injuries. Zay Flowers, I could see getting like last pick of the draft if he's there, but I think he also kind of, high on everyone's list. So I would just much rather go Andrews and not have to worry about the receivers. Let's round out your F tier for your guys to avoid.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the ones that you've already touched on, or we've already touched on. In DK Metcalf, once again, ADP thing. T. Higgins, ADP thing. Just will not draft him. And Christian Watson. That's not an ADP thing. I just never draft him. I have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in this tier for the same reasons. We went through your draft and you got Mike Evans really late, which I think at that point is a good pick. But I didn't put him in my late draft tier because I honestly can't believe that happened, and don't think it has in a single other draft I've done. Chris Godwin, I think you're a little bit more in on, was correct as well with the 10 for 90 yards or whatever it is. Evans, I think, has a little bit advantage in the touchdown category, but not enough for me to switch those at all. But they're still in my avoid these guys just because of where they're going and the more upside that you see with other players in these same ADP sections, especially with the quarterback play that other receivers are getting compared to these guys. With Absolutely. That said, there are 2 receiver rooms aside from the Packers already that we talked about that I will not touch, and that is the Ravens and the Chiefs. The Ravens, you already touched on. They've got Zay Flowers, who probably is the most talented, but isn't going to be the wide receiver 1 to start with. Odell Beckham, who Lamar Jackson personally wanted, but I don't think is the best guy in that offense. Rashad Bateman, who they used high draft capital on, but who knows if he's actually ever going to step into a huge role because of the injuries. And they have obviously Mark Andrews, who fantastic tight end. So I want no part of that room. Touched on Andrews earlier too. I don't want any part of that. Same with the Chiefs, obviously, aside from Travis Kelce. Somehow, in the best passing offense in the league, they managed to produce about a half of a good fantasy wide receiver every season. And that is after Tyreek Hill, which I do not understand. If anything, I'd be going Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore, maybe in the last round as a hopeful pick, but not something that I want to invest in personally. You?
Yeah, I didn't put the Chiefs on here because I'm not even considering touching a Chiefs player. I think there are like 2 good options that for either like if you play best ball or if you are in a very deep league. You could do Justin Ross. He looks like he's been doing some good stuff, and I think that's probably your better pick if you do go a Chiefs receiver, but I'm off on them. So if you're in a deep league and you need a wide receiver late one, Kadarius Toney is tricky for me because you see the talent there, and he'll be the receiver 1. Obviously, Kelce will be in front of him, but he's the tight end. So Toney will be the receiver 1, but I just worry about his health because labeling players as injury prone, but he's injury prone. He's constantly injured. So I don't trust any Chief player if you're in a 10 to 12 team league. If you're in a league like me where it's like 16 teams and it's just stupid, then yeah, you can get a Justin Ross there. But if you're in a 10 to 12 team league, I wouldn't even try and flirt with one of them and draft them on your team. I would just get rid of it. But that wraps up
And
That's
speaking of no, hold on.
room. Go for it.
Speaking of not touching guys, I just real quick, the two rooms we didn't go over were the Patriots and the Texans. And I will say that I've drafted Nico Collins in a couple of drafts as the wide receiver one there at the very end, just as, upside if he's the wide receiver one on a quarterback who probably won't do great his first season, but if he does, that's the guy you want. And personally, I am, no matter what, touching nobody in the Patriots receiver room after the departure of Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, I think the Texans have a lot to. Stroud has a lot to prove. I don't really want to touch any of them right now unless it's Dalton Schultz extremely late as like a tight end 2 on your team. And then as far as the Patriots receiving room, there's really nobody there. You have Juju, but you have Devontae Parker, Jones. So I don't really care for him. If I'm taking anybody on the Patriots, it's Ramondre Stevenson. Value now that Zeke is there. I think Zeke is probably the best free agent running back to go there as far as for Ramondre's value. So I'm off at the wide receivers for the Patriots and Texans. But that wraps up our tiers. We will do running back tiers next. But after the running back tiers, we'll take a small break before we get into the quarterback and tight end tiers and kind of mix it up before then. But yell at us in the comments. I know that we're going to piss a bunch of people off with some of these.
Oh, yeah.
So
Definitely.
I'm ready to hear it all. But thank you so much for listening. If you got this far, you deserve a high five if I ever meet you in real life. I don't know. But thank you guys. We appreciate you so much. You have anything else to add? Sign off completely.
No, well said. We really do appreciate you. We love hearing the comments, even if it is in complete disagreement, or maybe we'll persuade you over to our side on some of these guys. But yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Next time. Peace.
Peace.